Welcome to the Targeted SEO podcast with me, Ben Sisson. I'm the co-founder and director of a specialist SEO agency based on the south coast of the UK. And today we are talking about SEO-led websites. And I've got a special guest with me. I've got Conor.
Yep.
Conor, if you just want to give a very quick introduction to yourself and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the web designer and kind of developer here at Targeted SEO. So my responsibility is the sort of designing and developing of websites for our clients, as well as the maintaining and updating of those websites over, the course of months or even years. So my background's mostly in digital design and a bit of branding, but over the last probably 5 or so years, started to transition more into web design, web development, and then ended up in SEO.
Hey.
Hey.
So we're going to be talking about SEO-led websites today because we've got a lot of clients that come to us for that exact service, and they tend to stay with us for a long time as well because we've built those sites. So let's just start off with what exactly is an SEO-led website and why it's important.
Yeah. So an SEO-led website is really a website that's been designed and developed to be used for SEO. So it might sound a bit obvious, but the difference between that and maybe a sort of normal website is an SEO-led website is built so that it can grow with new sort of content types, new services, new sort of maybe even case studies.
Yep.
It's kind of built with that in mind, as well as, being able to convert to different users and to make sure to just represent a business as best as possible, really. So that's a really sort of in-depth way of talking about it.
Exactly, yeah. And those websites, they're built to scale, aren't they? Because if you just have a brochure type style website, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you really want a website to help your business grow, and it could be rolling out those new services.
Yeah, exactly. It's very specific towards what you're trying to achieve as a business, Brochure websites do have their place. There's no, of course they do. Whereas growing a website is a lot different than just sort of having one. It's a long-term process. It doesn't just happen, a 3 or 4 month web project, you launch it, it's job done. It really happens over the course of months, years. You've constantly got to be updating it because at the end of the day, people's businesses change. Businesses are constantly evolving their services, what they offer. So it only makes sense that a website tries to reflect that.
Yeah, and it grows as your business grows
exactly.
As well, because you might want to roll out new services or new products and things like that. And if you've got a website that's kind of built to scale like that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're not just trying to figure it out. Okay, now what do we do? Because we've got new templates that we might need to add into the site. And if you've already done that and designed the site with that in mind, it makes it a lot easier to scale.
It does, yeah.
So, we've got a lot of success with these types of sites. I think we've got maybe, several clients that have been with us for at least 4 or 5 years now.
Oh, yeah.
And they came to us for that website right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we've been able to scale and grow those sites for them. So what type of businesses do you think get a lot of success working with us for an SEO-led website?
So as an agency, we've seen a lot of success with the sort of finance sector and different industries within that. So accountants, mortgage brokers, mortgage advisors, financial advisors.
Nice, easy markets to work
with.
Easy,
non-competitive, regulated websites. So we've seen a lot of success with that, where I believe from my side of it, they're industries and sectors that don't always necessarily make sense from an outsider's perspective. So having a website that really shows what those services are and how it can really benefit a business, I think that's where we've been able to find that success. So a really great example is something like, you might just have bookkeeping, for example, as a service for an accountant. It's like, bookkeeping, it's bookkeeping, isn't it? Whereas you could get into something a bit more specific, like outsourced finance department. What does that actually mean for a service, for a business? And you can kind of get into that. So that's where we've started to see a lot of success, is where not just necessarily those vanilla services, if you call it that, but where businesses like that and sectors in that finance space are specializing a lot more, either in who they serve or the specific service that they offer.
Yeah. And not just finance, but we've also got some clients in renewable energy as well that those sites have scaled. You know, they came to us for a website maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're in the process of refreshing parts of that site.
Yeah, of course.
But it's a lot easier for us to do that because the site was built with that in mind.
We built it with that going forward. So it's really good to be able to do that. I think we're uniquely placed in order to do that. A lot of industries, I think, and a lot of agencies where a website project is almost a one-off, that do it for 3 or 4 months, even longer, and then once it's handed off, that's it. Whereas we kind of build it and design it with being able to use it long term in mind. And also kind of how you said, like, if we've built that website to begin with, we understand how it's been built, so we can, if we need to add, let's say, a new section onto it in 6 months' time, it's not a completely alien thing to us. We can just jump in like it's the easiest thing in the world, but we're better suited than most to be able to deal with that and build that.
And it's still WordPress, isn't it? That's something we specialize in.
Yeah.
Do you think there are other platforms that would work just as well, or do you think WordPress as a CMS is probably the best suited for a type of site that we build or scales?
I think we're accustomed to using WordPress, and I think as long as you're using a content management system that you know can achieve what you want it to, I think it's okay. We're obviously, we will shout about WordPress till the cows come home. It's what a majority of the internet in terms of websites is built with. It's open source, so it's very easy to sort of build on top of. There's, obviously very conscious of the amount of plugins that you put onto a website. But
some of those websites we've kind of taken over and they've got like 50 odd plugins installed.
Yeah, and like 3 different caching plugins and, 4 plugins that do the same thing because one widget on one.
Deactivate.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's a really great part of WordPress, is the fact that some people say that it's very difficult to scale a WordPress website in terms of performance, but if you know exactly what you're doing, then I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm uniquely placed with that, where I'm kind of the designer as well as the developer. So I always think of that as 2 separate things in my head. Of the design is the planning side of it, so you're kind of planning what you're going to do, and the development is just execution. So if you design it and plan it knowing you're only going to need to use 2 or 3 plugins, or a plugin can do that,
keep it quite light.
Exactly, keeps it very lightweight.
Yeah.
So that kind of then lends itself to SEO. So it's kind of like what the website needs to do long term, so you design it with all of that in mind, rather than designing all of it and building it and then deciding you need to do something else with it. So it's all kind of connected.
It is, yeah. And you've obviously got the advantage of working very closely with our SEO team.
Yeah.
So literally like sat opposite them.
Yeah.
So, and that comes to, you're working closely with Caroline and Harry and also our content team.
Yeah.
So can you just talk us through that a bit more? Because I think some people don't realize that when you're developing a website, you're thinking about how the content is placed into that site as well.
Yeah,
into the pages, how you're structuring it.
Yeah.
And it's not kind of just bolted on afterwards or just uploaded and then that's it. When you design a page, you are thinking, right, how is this content going to work? How are the headings going to be formatted? Are there any sort of technical considerations like schema markup and things like that, which you need to implement when you develop the site? I
think a lot of people tend to kind of see it as very black and white, of either the design starts first or the content's written first. I mean, there are arguments either way, whereas I think what we do is probably best, where, for example, there might be, it's what we've seen success with it. So, for example, there might be a service page, for example, that's being written by the content team, and there's an outline that's been created and then that gets written, it gets handed to me. I might then have a look at it and try and put it together visually, and might go, oh, actually, that section might need to be tweaked slightly in order to maybe convey what the service is a bit better. Or actually, there's 5 sections here. It might be better if it's 4 or 6 for a column layout. And it's elements like that, and then that back and forth. But I've also known it with the content team where it works the other way around, where they've tried to write a piece of content and then gone, I don't really know how you're going to show this visually. Do you think you could give that a go first and then sort of let me have a look? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. So there's a lot of back and forth, and I think that's the best way to go around it. So just making sure we collaborate and communicate a lot. And as well, talking about like content and the strategy behind it, understanding in terms of going back to an SEO-led website, understanding the sort of main keyword or keyword clusters that you're going to be going after on your website helps me massively, because it then helps me to almost do competitor research where, let's say, you might be looking at bookkeeping services in Woking. You want to be like, okay, who's ranking for that currently? What are they doing well? You can almost do something like a SWOT analysis on it. And then you can pick that apart and go, right, this one's doing this bit better. And it also helps from a design point of view to really gather that context of being like, oh yeah, maybe I don't necessarily, I feel like I've grown to learn a lot about the accountancy industry. So having that and learning that context through competitor research then helps you produce a better website at the end of the day.
So just going back to the technical foundations of a website, because sometimes that gets neglected and not maintained. And does that really impact SEO? Because if you start to let a website deteriorate, you're not managing the back end properly. Core plugins.
It can definitely cause issues in terms of that. You might end up with like plugin conflicts where maybe the sort of version of PHP that you're using doesn't work well with a plugin that's been updated. But as well, from an SEO point of view, Google rewards websites that are constantly updating their content. And we say content in terms of like written content. Google treats the HTML the same way. So if you, let's say, rebuild the website with a lot less sort of sections and columns, Google will still see that as being updated. So in terms of keeping the website updated and keeping it fresh, it helps to kind of keep signaling to Google, being like, oh, hi, hey, we're still doing stuff over here. We're still keeping you updated, and Google's going to be like, well, if it's the most updated, surely it's the most relevant content. Surely it's the most trustworthy.
And those issues as well can sometimes reflect on the front end, because if you've got like caching problems, sometimes a website won't display properly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that doesn't happen very often, but you might have that issue where the page is corrupted. And then you've got search engines not being able to crawl that page efficiently. So maintenance is really important when it comes to, looking after a website, making sure it scales. Now, this is a good question. Why is your website never finished? Because that's a good one. We've got quite a lot of content on our blog about that.
We do.
Go check it out.
Go check it out.
But in our mind, a website should continue to grow. You shouldn't just publish it, forget about it.
Yeah, for sure. We've kind of alluded to it already of being like, you might have a 3 or 4 month website project, but the website's truly never finished, because there'll always be better ways to do things. And, Google algorithm updates and even changings in the industries. So, for example, we lean back on accountants again. We've had a lot of stuff in the last probably 3 or 6 months of making tax digital has finally come to a head. So that's a lot of stuff that maybe on a website that was launched last year, that content may not have been updated. So that's why it's really never finished. It's I almost think about it of kind of like if you're in your house and you've got little DIY stuff on it that you need to do, you can't just leave it. You've got to be able to update it and maintain it so that it's a nice house to live in. So your website's weirdly quite similar, where you need to be able to update it and maintain it. And I think, that's...
Yeah, because we launched a website for an accounting firm about three months ago or so. And it was a generic accounting firm to begin with.
Yeah.
And they've repositioned as a specialist in a certain industry. We won't go into what the industry is.
Yeah.
But what we've seen is we haven't actually done any additional SEO work to it. So we haven't added any more content. But checking things like Google Search Console and analytics, we have seen an increase in clicks and impressions for the terms they wanted to go after.
Exactly, yeah.
So an SEO-led website is really important from that perspective.
Exactly.
But then just leaving it, there's a great opportunity afterwards. Don't just leave it.
Yeah.
Keep going, because we've built it with that in mind, for it to scale.
And with SEO, you almost need to think about it of like you're working on it almost like 2 or 3 months ahead, because as much as we say Google will crawl it or index it, we can only encourage it to do so. We can't necessarily say Google's going to crawl your website tomorrow. We can only give it the right signals to encourage that to happen. So you kind of set the groundwork for things to happen a few months out.
So if somebody comes to us and they've had a website built by somebody else, what would we do to that site? Is there anything that you'd recommend working on?
Yeah, we've had that happen quite a lot, to be honest. And obviously there's probably things I could look at from either a visual point of view or even just a general like user experience heuristic point of view. There's definitely things I could do from that, but because obviously we really specialize in SEO-led websites, in that situation, I need to learn a bit more about kind of the historical data behind it. So I'll lean a lot more on the content team and the SEO team in particular to really get into that, because sometimes we've had it where they don't even have Search Console set up.
Yeah.
So
it's the basics.
There's a lot of fact finding around that and kind of understanding basically what the website is doing and then building on top of what works, removing sections that maybe don't work. So for example, we've had one recently where they joined us as an accounting client, but they have specialized in creative and marketing agencies, PR agencies. But I looked at it and I was like, it's a nice looking website. Of course it is. It's like, but I need to let the SEO team really get into this and have a look at it first. There's obviously elements that I could include and, different types of even schema we could include, like breadcrumbs, FAQs, etc. But I need to know exactly what the sort of main goal of it is and what the strategy is behind that. And then I can come in to kind of support that and kind of build out those visual parts of it. So you might see, for example, like, they really want to specify outsourced finance department, but they don't do very much of that. I can then analyze the website and go, okay, where does a section like that best fit? Does it fit on the homepage? Maybe it only needs to go on a specific sector page. There's a lot of context and fact finding that needs to happen before I even start moving pixels around and making it look pretty, if you want to call it that.
You get really under the skin of that as well, don't you? It's quite impressive to see you using like Google Search Console and even our SEO software, which as a web designer is a bit unusual.
Maybe, I guess it's more just having more context. I kind of talked about the context before, but just as much context as I can get from a design point of view, it helps me make better decisions. So Search Console is just a great way of being like, this is what people are using the website for. This is the terms that the website is ranking for. So it's like, okay, I need to keep all of these in mind while I move forward with whatever I'm doing. So it probably is a bit different, but I quite like it.
I love that though. And I think that shows the difference between a normal website or a brochure style website and a site that's really designed with SEO in mind. Because we are looking at the data, making those informed decisions, and thinking about, okay, what's this website going to look like in 6 months' time?
Sure.
When it's handed over to the SEO team and they're starting to work on it as well. That's fantastic. So we had a care home client that came to us and they had an existing website, but they were actually looking at rebranding. Had registered a brand new domain as well and came to us for the website and then SEO after that. What would be your advice, when that kind of scenario comes up?
So I guess, if you're buying a domain for the first time and then I believe Harry's already had a discussion about sort of the new domain and buying domains.
Check out that
if you want to go check that out, please do. So building on top of that, if you've got a brand new domain with no historical data at all, you kind of want to make sure that you're going after the right terms. And again, this is where me and the SEO team will work really closely together, because some topics, if you're talking about them, like, just me and you might just chat about, might not necessarily be the quote technical term or keyword that people are searching for. So that's probably a large part of what you'd want to do, is make sure that whatever keyword you're aiming towards is figured out as soon as possible. If you have a domain that has no equity and no historical data around it at all, it's kind of just about going for it, figuring out roughly what you want to talk about and making sure the website fits that. So kind of going back to that care home example, we launched it about a year or so ago, and we've actually got a meeting with them in a few days' time where we're going to be talking about what the website now looks like, because there was no data. There was no historical data. It was kind of putting your flag in the sand and seeing what happens. So now we're able to look at that year's worth of data and go, okay, let's iterate and let's build on top of that.
Make informed decisions.
Yeah. Now. So I guess it's about just making a good step forward first, and then just building on top of that and giving yourself the time to be able to kind of let it grow, let it breathe, and then build on top of it once you've had about a year or so's worth of data to play with.
Thanks, Conor. That was fantastic insight into what makes an SEO-led website. And in our next episode, we're going to be talking about the whole process behind SEO-led websites. So stay tuned for that one. And like and subscribe to our channel for more SEO insights.